Call this meeting to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Jack Kollars.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. If you have a cell phone on you, please silence or shut it off. Is there a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
With Mr. Chair, with one addition that I emailed out, a master service agreement with Baker Tilly. We'll put that under the administration items as number 4.
Okay, but kind of close to number 3, but okay.
Right.
So I'll move the agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay. Motion second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Okay, consent agenda.
Move the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Public appearances. You get 3 minutes each. Whoever would like to come forward, you sit at the desk, state your name and address, get 3 minutes. Anyone? Okay.
My name is Valita Cordes, 46882 547th Lane, Cortland, Minnesota. I'm here speaking regarding the gun club improvement enlargement. I'm speaking more today to the board, to the county, as opposed to towards the Nicolletts. I know I've already brought up as to what this will do to our neighborhood as far as for safety and our peace and everything, and apparently that has not been really considered, although I do appreciate the 2 gentlemen who did vote in favor of us last time, keeping our safety and peace. What I want to bring up today is simply a reiteration of Minnesota Statute 97B and the issue that apparently the county has, the zoning board has stated that we have not got a corral in the location we do have, and that we would have had to have a feedlot permit to get that. We certainly do not have a feedlot, and I would recommend that our director of the zoning board look into the difference between a feedlot and a corral for 4 pet horses. We do have a corral in existence. It's been there for a while. There's been livestock on the property long before we were ever there. As a matter of fact, there was a horse there when we moved there. My question is, I know that the zoning board, at least I believe 3 members, did go to the gun club property and check out what their plans are and what their improvements have been so far and things that they've done. But no one was willing to check out our properties, the neighbors in our area, to even check that we had a corral that might be close to the property line. So at this point, the shooting shed, the shooting line that the Nicolletts have put up for the long-range rifle is currently too close, according to Minnesota Statute 97B, to our existing corral. Now, according to 97B, there's also no time limit on that. So a property that is a farm or any sort of property that could have a livestock corral could technically put up a corral at any time. This corral is existing, but perhaps Storings want to put up a corral along their line. Perhaps we want to put up more corrals. It doesn't matter. It is existing. My point being that perhaps the Nicollet County Zoning Board and anyone who is considering passing this as it is not only doing a detriment to our neighbors in the area and not presuming to care about the safety or the well-being or the land use of the neighbors, but also doing a disservice to the Nicolletts. They're putting a lot of money into setting this up. They've already put a lot of money into that building in a spot that it's going to need to be moved from. When they start shooting from it, we are going to be contacting the sheriff. And the chief deputy has seen the corral, so it does exist, and I'd welcome anyone to come see that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Is that microphone on, Mr. Chair?
It is.
Good morning, Joe Michaelitz, 41474 Judson Bottom Road, North Mankato. There was concern about the distance from their corral. The local conservation officer, Thor Nelson, had come out to the property, and he measured the distance from the shooting house to their corral. And a corral, he obviously knows the definition of the code section better than I do, but he just wanted to write a report, which he wrote a report, and we have a copy of his report that was submitted up in St. Paul. But the distance from the shooting house to their corral is 635 feet, and which is more than 500 feet. And so I just wanted to make sure that you all understood that, and some third party had done the measurement. And we have that report that we plan to give to Mandy just to keep in the file.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That would be the
Yes.
corral.
Anyone else? Okay, we're gonna close off the public.
I'm here.
Oh, sorry. Looked down at the paper too early.
Sorry, John. I wasn't jumping fast enough. My name's Brenda Golden. I live at 46194 561st Avenue, New Ulm. My distance or location from the gun range will be inside of a mile. Between my property and the gun range is M&R Pavers demo pit. I have a few questions that I just didn't get clarification for from the last encounter, and I'm wondering if anybody can answer me these questions now. Is this facility going to be public or private? And the corporate events are going to be weekends or during the week? Is there going to be any kind of military assault rifles, as in AK-47s or AR-15s allowed? Is there an airstrip? I mean, I'm hearing that there was going to be an airstrip built at the very beginning, but I'm not sure if I've heard anything since then. Is there an airstrip in place, or is there going to be any kind of air traffic above our homes? Also, if there's a neglectful discharge like we probably have had already come across our land and nearly hit my nephew, is there any kind of corrective or preventive action that happens in accordance with that? What is the process of finding out how, when, and why it happened? Is there any kind of a public acknowledgement when it happens, when we have an escape of sorts? Is there any kind of notice put out to the neighborhood? Is there any kind of interaction at all? Is this kind of like a private and kept close to the vest? I mean, I'm wondering, is there like the people that are going to be monitoring the gun use of these individuals that may or may not be familiar with guns? If there's a training session, is there like a mentor with each person? How do we prevent escapes from going past the berm? I understand the berm's been bulked up or built up since the last escape and inside of the last 2 weeks. And I'm on good terms with the people next door that worked on it, so I have no concerns at all about that. I just want to know what's going to happen in the future to prevent us from being in a target zone.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thanks.
Ryan, I'm gonna lean on you. We really don't answer questions at proceedings like this.
No, we do not.
So if someone would like to address some of these, have their own public appearance, that would be fine, correct?
So people can have public appearances now, but we don't answer questions. But when the board has their discussion on the next agenda item, this agenda item, you could raise some of these questions.
Any more public appearances? Yes, Dave. Yes, come
I
up.
can sign in like we have had to in the past. Am I allowed to speak?
Yes.
My name is David Stirring, 430 Ziske Road, Cortland, Minnesota. We own the property just to the south of the River Ridge. I asked last time, the Nicollets, whether the pistol shooting targets could not be in the opposite direction instead of towards our property. Roughly, the pistol target range berm, as proposed, is 53 yards from our property line, and the shooting spot about 146 yards, both which are very inadequate for pistol shooting. I was told that bluff setback rules would not allow the shooting direction to be changed in the opposite direction, away from our property instead of towards it. I questioned this with environmental services, and the answer was that there is no bluff setback rule that would prevent the change of direction. And that is what I would like to see, because the pistol target ranges and the short range pistol shooting will be very dangerous for us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dave. Anyone else? Guess we'll close that part of things. Property services.
Mr. Chair, the issue that's before the board for property services is to address the issues raised at the last, or 2 meetings ago, regarding the conditional use permit filed by the Nicolletts. The matter before you is 3 issues essentially. The board had approved the conditional use permit reserving 2 issues. That is the consumption of alcohol before and during shooting events on the premises. The second was the type of ammunition that was going to be utilized on the range, and then finally approval of the findings that were then drafted based upon the presentations at that board meeting. So the proposed findings and the proposed 2 additional conditions were included in your board packet. My recommendation to the board at this time is to take each of those conditions in turn, starting with the alcohol condition, followed by discussion of the ammunition condition, followed by the review of the proposed findings of fact and conditions. The board has already approved the conditional use permit itself, and now it's just ensuring that the findings that were drafted reflect how the board wants those findings to be memorialized to support the decision that was reached at that board meeting.
Okay.
And for the board's benefit, the alcohol restriction condition is found as number 11 of the conditions that were presented to the board.
And Mr. Chair, we're recommending that each condition be addressed separately, correct?
Right,
Yeah.
first the alcohol, then the ammunition, then the findings.
Are there any feelings on the alcohol, or do you want to give a synopsis of?
The condition that was presented based upon the board's discussion was the consumption of alcoholic beverages at the facility by shooting participants is prohibited both prior to and while the participants are engaging in shooting activities. And I realize now there's a typo in there. But it's activities, not activates.
Is there a motion in regards to the alcohol policy presented?
Mr. Chair, I would move that condition.
Motion Motion and a second, discussion. Yes, Terry.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask a couple of the questions that were asked because
Thank you.
I think as you were leaning, I think we can get some of the answers. So, for example, I understand we were asked, I'm going to start with Ms. Golden, the public or private nature of the operation. I understand that it is actually, I don't know whether it's a public or private facility. And I assume, Madam County Attorney, I can ask them if it's a public or private facility.
I think you can ask that question.
Would you like them to step forward?
I think that's the only way
Best.
we're going to get the answer. And I'd like to just stick to the questions.
Sure. It will be both. It will be public, but we will have memberships available.
Okay.
If I understand that, the members would probably get a discount on things compared to the public.
Exactly, discounted pricing with the membership.
Will there be corporate events held at the facility?
Yes.
And is there any time frame when they are or are not permitted?
Really no prohibitions. It would be during regular business hours.
Okay. Was there a corporate event held on August 1st?
No.
Was there a wedding reception held on August 1st?
They're not as part of the business operations at all. We, as personal use of our private land, we have friends that were having their wedding reception at their farm close by. And we have an empty storage shed building that, as the date drew nearer, we thought perhaps that would be a convenient location for them. We did talk to multiple people at the county to get the green light that we wouldn't be in violation of anything that we're applying for or proposing, and we were told that as private landowners, that would be within our rights of personal land use. We weren't paid anything, we didn't charge anything, we didn't offer any services or any goods at all, other than just the use of a building.
So there may be events held there that are not related to shooting?
Not at all with the business operations going forward, no.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't say with regard to the business operations.
I guess we would have to maybe get clarity on our rights as landowners of the personal use of our property, if we could do things outside of the business operations.
Okay. Are there plans for an airstrip?
No. We, Joe might have to speak on this, he's the pilot. He does have we have a small airplane that can land on grass. There's no airstrip.
Mr. Storing asked about the bluff set, or the pistol range and going in the opposite direction.
Yeah, I did talk to Dave after the last meeting. In that too, I don't think we would be able to relocate the road. The bluff setback probably has nothing to do with the berms themselves, but to shift the direction of fire for the pistol range, we would have to relocate the road going around the pistol range just to keep the property safe. And I don't know how that road would fit in with the bluff setback on that southern boundary of that field.
Is that a possibility?
We are open to exploring anything. I mean, I will tell you, as a shooter, it would be advantageous to be shooting not in the direction of the sun, but to be shooting in the northerly direction. So we are in the process right now. We've got about 7 things that we need to work with property services before we can get our conditional use permit issued. And the grading plan and the final site map is a part of that. So yeah, we're open to anything that we can do.
Mr. Chair, I don't have anything else at the moment.
I have a question. What is the range on a high-power pistol, like a 357 or something? Do you have any idea?
That I may have to defer
Brian?
to.
Let you respond best. You could just assume it's as similar to a rifle, a little less. It's a little less powder, so.
Okay. Any other questions? Nobody? Let's vote on the alcohol motion now?
Oh, no, I just want to make more questions for
go,
Ms. Michaels.
go.
Well, you can sit down, I think.
Oh, okay.
I think she's waiting for you to invite her she can sit down,
Oh, you
right?
can sit
You're
down
done.
if
Okay,
there's no more
thank you.
questions. Any other comments or questions before we vote? Okay, all in favor on the alcohol ordinance? Or should this be our roll call?
It's not an ordinance.
It's not, it's condition.
So we still have to vote on it, right?
But it's a condition, not an ordinance.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. Passes. Okay, ammunition. Michelle?
That is condition number 30 in the proposed findings as drafted. As drafted, states firearms that are larger than 39 caliber are not permitted on the rifle range for commercial use except for muzzleloader and black powder style firearms. The commercial use of tracer, armor piercing, incendiary, steel core, explosive, steel jacketed, and accelerator ammunition is prohibited. Shotguns that are 12 gauge or smaller are allowed to be used at the facility.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And maybe I'll ask Ryan, and just to facilitate things, we were asked about whether the term was called military assault weapons would be permitted. Would they be excluded under this condition?
No, I don't think so.
So the most people don't have an AK-47, but AR-15s are, they look like an assault rifle, but they're semi-automatic. They would be permitted because they're less than 39 caliber. Most of them 20 some caliber, right? So they would be permitted. But they're semi-automatic, they're not fully automatic rifles, which means you have to pull the trigger individually versus just holding it.
Mr. Chair, I admit some of my ignorance in knowing the effect in terms of safety.
I think we all have ignorance, Terry. Question I had is, you were saying for the shotgun, it was gonna be steel shot only? Is that correct?
Well, on the sporting clays course,
Yeah.
steel shot only.
Okay. Do you police that somehow?
We will. I mean, we're gonna have lots of signs, and we'll be randomly checking
Okay.
people to make sure.
That's what I was hoping.
Could you come on up, please? Would that be okay? Because I have a question as well, and then we probably should get it all on the microphone.
Sure.
We were asked about, I think the term was called neglectful discharge, and I know you just mentioned signs. I'm just interested in your understanding of what happens if a stray bullet or bullets enter private property of one of your neighbors.
Mm-hmm. Well, we will be, do everything in our power to make sure that that doesn't happen, by making sure that the people using the facilities are, understand the rules, understand the safety. Everybody will have to check in before they go to any of the ranges, and they will be briefed on the range itself and safety. I would be really surprised with the height of the berms and everything we're doing that there would be a stray bullet. If there was, first of all, everything that would be, behind the berm, the bullet will not reach anybody's residence or it's just very, very low risk that somebody could be hit by a stray bullet.
I just want to make sure I understand. You mentioned that your understanding it'd be very low risk that a bullet would reach a residence, but would it be it'd be a somewhat greater risk that it would reach their property? Is that correct? Are you using residence as the building or the property line?
Well, our goal, and we're very confident we can do this, is make sure that no projectiles leave the property.
Okay.
And that's number one. And, could it happen? It's possible. But if it did happen, my wife and I are, we understand risk. We're business people. We certainly don't want liability. And so we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Mr. Chair, if I might,
Yes.
I appreciate everything you just said, but my question was, what is your understanding of the process if it does happen?
Well, obviously, there would probably be a complaint filed, and we would deal with that at the time and address it. And, yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Motion at all?
Say I'll move the condition number 30.
I'll second it.
Motion and second, discussion? All in favor?
Clarification, Mr. Chair. So it reads, firearms that are larger than 39 caliber are not permitted on the rifle range for commercial use, except for muzzle loader and black powder style firearms. The commercial use of tracer, armor piercing, incendiary, steel core, explosive, steel jacketed, and accelerator ammunition is prohibited. Shotguns that are 10 gauge or smaller are allowed to be used at the facility. To the writer who created this verbiage, what's the difference between commercial use and private use for any of these weapons?
Planning
Maybe
and-
the county attorney could answer.
Planning and zoning has control over the commercial use of the property itself. Individuals as private landowners still have certain ability to use their own private property as a use that they deem appropriate. So the planning and zoning action is to address the actions of the gun club, which is what they're seeking the conditional use permit for.
But I was just trying to draw back to that earlier discussion that we had between, is this a commercial or private club? Is this a public or private club? And I'm just trying to get my head straight as to how that falls into this definition.
If the gun club is operating as a business, what I understood the answer to that question to be is that they will have members, and then anyone who wants to come and use the facility and pay as a public member, not as a member, that would be under the gun club business practice, and that's what this condition is addressed. If the Michelitzes choose to go out and use their property in a manner that they deem appropriate outside of that business use, planning and zoning doesn't cover those activities.
Terry, you have a question?
I don't know if I have a question or not. I agree with your reading of the law.
Correct.
I think I'll just make a statement. We heard earlier that you have and would perhaps continue to use your property for private purposes, and you're certainly legally permitted to do that. I, for one, would be deeply affected if I found out that you were using it for private purposes and using ammunition that were about to, in essence, prohibit for the commercial purposes. I can't stop you, but I'd be pretty mad if we found out that you were having private parties in order to do something that you can't do commercially. And I'm just saying that. It's just an observation.
And Mr. Chair,
Yes.
that's why I was trying to bring that up, just to see something like that could happen, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, if I might respond. Yes, but I think that if I understand correctly, if there were no permit involved here and the Michelitzes just owned the property, they could fire any legal firearm as long as it was fired in a safe manner. And they would include some of the items that would be banned for this commercial purpose. That's my quick understanding. There may be some of these weapons that were, go ahead, please.
No, and I don't mean to interrupt, Commissioner, but is this number 30 complete enough? Or does it just cover the letter of the law?
Well, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
And I'll turn to the county attorney, who really should be the one, I think, answering these questions. But I'll jump in and say, all this permit is about a commercial operation on private property. That commercial operation under our ordinances and under state law is permissible, with the recognition that conditions can be placed upon that permit. And so what we've been trying to work on as a board is what are the appropriate conditions that can be placed upon a legal, an operation that is legal under both county ordinance and state law. We can't limit what you do on your private property or I do on my private property, provided that that activity is conducted in a safe manner and is legal. So I recognize I can't tell any property owner, you can't do this in your private property use. I would hope as a measure of good faith to the neighbors, not doing something privately that we're saying you can't do commercially would be consistent with the neighbors' expectations about their own safety.
We're totally in agreement with you.
I don't know, County, if you have anything to add, I may have gotten something wrong.
No, I would agree with your assessment. We're here to regulate under our planning and zoning ordinance, commercial activity and the purview of what people do on their private property in their personal capacity would not fall under that purview as long as it is safe and permitted by the applicable statutes that govern the activity itself.
Madam County Attorney, if we were to vote no on this issue, would that mean there's no restrictions? Or would that mean that the whole project is in jeopardy?
No, you already, or well, the permit itself went through reserving only these two conditions. So if you did not approve this condition or modify this language, then there would be no prohibition on the type of ammunition that is utilized. So if there's discussion of changes to adding a specific type of ammunition that wasn't included, for example, that you wanted to include, that certainly falls in the purview of what you reserve for today's action.
Anybody else? More questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes. Findings of fact?
So the board has before it the proposed findings that were drafted to include all of the conditions recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then findings that were modified or were developed to reflect both the action of the Planning and Zoning hearings that were held, public comment, and the conversation and discussion of this issue at the board meeting.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So, Mr. Chair, I do have, I think, a couple of remaining questions about this, because I think it's our last opportunity to discuss this. And Mandy, these questions may be for you, I'm not sure. My first question is about, this is in Cortland Township, if I understand correctly. And last time we were here, we had, I believe, 2 members of the Cortland Township Board. The questions were about road use, road maintenance. Was the road sufficient for potential traffic? I don't know that the county has ever heard back from Cortland Township what's going on with the road use aspects of this project.
And Mandy can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we've received an official response from the Cortland Township. We've had members of the township board that have come and spoke, acknowledging their position, but not with official action from the township board itself.
Mandy, could you come up, please? That'd be great. Is that okay, Mr. Chair?
Yes. I could give you some insight on it also, Terry.
Well, if you'd like to go first.
Well, my understanding is the Cortland Township Board thought when they went to the planning and zoning meetings and made their little speeches, that was their comment. But apparently the law says they have to have a motion and submit it to be acknowledged in the permit.
Are you referring to the conditions
Yes.
of these? There is a condition that the township and the applicants come together and create a satisfactory road agreement. You're correct that the township officials have attended the previous meetings, and I believe they did state that they have made no formal action on the road as far as how they're going to resolve the issues out there. but they are in discussion with it. We, as planning and zoning, cannot issue the conditional use permit until that specific condition is satisfied, that we have some type of agreement between the township and the applicants before we can move forward. And there are several other conditions too that need to be resolved before we can issue the conditional use permit. So that is one of them that needs to be resolved.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
And Mindy, this may not be a question for you, maybe a question for the township, I'm not sure, but we know that there have been concerns expressed about children on the road riding bicycles and the like. Is the township empowered to place additional signage along the road? Is that a MnDOT or a county? I just want to make sure that somebody's talking about the safety of the kids riding their bikes on that road.
I would defer that question to the county engineer. Perhaps he has better sense of signage on the roads.
Okay, we can wait on that one. So we don't do the back and forth. Mr. Chair, if I might.
Yes, keep going, Terry.
There was a mention of the corral along the road. And the distance of the corral from the range, I think the distance was cited to be 635 feet. This was when Ms. Cordes was speaking. And I think there was a question about whether it was the right corral and whether you received the conservation officer report. Did you receive the report, and is it the distance it's supposed to be?
Yes, we did receive a copy of the initial comments made by Conservation Officer Thor Nelson. He was on site on July 31st, and based on his measurements, and he goes further into explain how he obtained those measurements and the process that he used, and based on his professional determination, the corral is 635 feet from the shooting shed structure.
Is there, do you happen to know, is there more than one corral?
Based on the conservation officer's professional opinion and his interpretation of statute, this was what he determined.
Okay. I'm fine.
Would the pistol range be closer than that?
No, the pistol range is located on the west side and south.
Okay. Other questions? Oh, you were gonna have Seth come up?
Well, I do have a question about I'm trying to understand how the road safety issues, whose purview and who's signing off for making the satisfactory agreement. So Mandy, I don't think it's a question for you at that point. Thank you, Mandy.
Do you want to talk to this, or Carl, is this the sheriff's area or the county engineer's area? Well, right, yeah.
Well, Mr. Chair, I understand. I don't think it is your purview. I think it is probably the township's purview in terms of the road safety. And one can only hope, not only hope, I don't mean it that way. I hope that the township is able to have that conversation to make sure that the safety issues that have been raised by residents are being considered.
And
We have a,
Mr. Chair, there are certain procedures that are in place that if additional signs want to be placed on a road about how that process can go about. I've not looked at it from a township perspective versus what might be done for changing, for example, the speed limit on a road. I've looked at it from that perspective, but not for some of these other safety issues. But there is a process in place to go about changing that, should the township want to do that.
Okay.
Mrs. Cordes,
The Chief Deputy, Carl Jensen.
come forward, please.
The public comment portion of the meeting was closed.
I just wanted to let you know that Chief Deputy Carl Jensen did walk in the corral we're talking about, and it's definitely not the one that they're talking about. And Thor has never been to our corral. So perhaps he might let you know where it is.
Thank you.
It's your decision.
Is this a question that board members have, or?
I guess we do. Come forward, please, Carl. Make your comment.
Morning.
Question on the corrals, is that the?
I don't have the
Yes.
question.
There's a upper pasture, and when I visited the property, there was a smaller, lower corral, I would say.
So that doesn't really help us out for the distance.
The lower corral is closer to the Michelitz's than the upper corral. By what distance, I can't tell you.
All right, thank you.
Is there a way that we could put, Mr. Chair, could we put a picture of the beacon up on the address, up on the screen? You want me to give you the address? Yeah, 46.
Mr. Chair, is Commissioner Colors, can I interrupt just 1 second before we pull up that photo? Mr. Chair,
Yes.
could we check with the county attorney what we're to be doing at this point?
Sure.
And what is permissible?
Okay.
The board has approved the conditional use permit. The thing that is before you now is to go through the findings of fact. You can talk about language you may wish to choose to change for those finding of fact that was provided, but it's not an opportunity at this point to gather information, for example, about changing your decision to
Okay.
approve or deny the conditional use permit, because the board already voted to approve it.
Okay. So we are not gonna get the picture then?
I don't know that that goes to the review of the
Okay.
findings that
Okay.
is before the board.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Commissioner, thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Michelle.
No?
Mr. Chair, I will move to adopt the findings of fact as presented in our board packet.
We have a motion?
Repeat that, Larry, I'm sorry.
I move to accept the findings of fact presented in our board packet.
Second. Motion and second, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Passes. Okay. Seth?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board and staff. A couple items from Public Works this morning. The first being to consider MnDOT Detour Agreement 1044658. MnDOT is planning a pavement and culvert rehab project on 99 that will be worked on next year, 2021. That project will have several centerline large culvert replacements, and that project will require detour. MnDOT is planning to use County Road 5 and 40 as part of the detour agreement, and that detour agreement is included in your packet for your review. This is MnDOT's standard detour agreement. We've passed numerous ones of these in the past. The detour agreement compensates the county for the anticipated life consumed of those roadways. MnDOT has calculated that reimbursement to the county to be approximately $15,641.11. Also in your packet, towards the back of the agreement, there is a map showing what those detour routes look like. There's a stage 1 and stage 2 component of that. So I'd be more than happy to answer any questions on this item.
So moved.
Seth?
Second the motion.
Motion and second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Okay, you have another one?
Yes, consider MnDOT lighting agreement 1044568. This item is also related to the Trunk Highway 99 rehab project in 2021. The state had inquired if the county would like to participate with providing intersection lighting at the intersections County Road 13, 17, and 40. The county has in the past participated in intersection lighting projects with the DOT where we have paved county roads that intersect Trunk Highway. County Road 13 already has intersection lighting, and that was installed some years ago when 169 was rehabbed, concrete pavement placed. 13 was used as a detour route, and at that time, MnDOT had paved a right turn lane on 13, a right-hand turn lane on 99 to turn onto 13, and also they installed that intersection lighting to improve safety at that location. So in your packet, there is the lighting agreement for your review. As part of this agreement, MnDOT will bear all the costs of the installation of the lighting system. The county's responsibility is all for all future maintenance and electrical costs to operate that system. The lights on these lights, the luminaries are LEDs, and they're very cost efficient. They're very efficient. So more than happy to answer any questions on this.
Move the
Chair,
resolution.
second.
Motion and a second, Marie.
I have a question, Mr. Chair. What about the intersection at the state hospital, right at the top of the hill, where you can go into the state hospital or you can go into Gustavus? I can't off the top of my head remember the name of the street. Is that already lit?
Boy, I think there is lighting already there, and that's a city street.
I think there is.
That's a city street that intersects
Yeah.
from the north. So,
I was just thinking that if it isn't lit, it should be lit.
yeah, I believe that intersection is lit, and they also, they did improvements at that intersection also as part of that 169 detour. And I think lights were installed at that time.
I don't think they're after that.
So Seth, have they done any solar for intersection lighting like that? Solar installations where you don't have to hook up to the electric
I'm
utility?
not aware of any solar installations for street lighting.
Okay.
The amount of power probably required for that would require probably some extensive battery packs.
Panel would be too big to set up on top of the post.
Yes.
Pack would take too much energy.
All right, any more questions?
Do we have a motion and a second,
Yes.
Abby? Good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, passes. Okay, Ryan?
I have one
Oh,
question,
sorry.
if I may.
Yes, ask
Say
Seth.
a little, how did we fare on 14 after this last round of rain?
We had another decent-sized slide. Of course, that was came about because of the heavy rains that we
Right.
received right down the Minnesota River Valley once again, and it just keeps hitting this project. Highway maintenance went out early Saturday morning to just assess that whole corridor to see what damages they may run onto, and there was definitely another slide. This will be the third slide on the 14 hill. This one occurred between the old slide and the slide that occurred
So that whole,
earlier this
that whole
summer.
grade is sloughing away.
Yes, and it's just reinforcing the decision to add
Right.
to the existing contract that was awarded to Mathewitz for fixing the initial slide, that this whole slope all the way down the hill is unstable and needs to be completely rebuilt.
As long as we're at that end of the county, what about 21 on the river? Did we have some more loss there too, or has that not been a factor with these rains?
No additional loss because of this last rain event, which is good.
As long as we're asking Seth, how about Fort Ridgely?
Fort Ridgely, they had poured, of course, we had that area where the forms fell out underneath the deck. A 14 by 14 foot area of that deck had to be rehabbed. Basically, all the old concrete had to be taken out and a patch poured in. That patch was poured on August 14th along with the north concrete rail. We're just waiting to get the required concrete strength on that patch, and then the contractor will pour the south rail. Once that south rail reaches its anticipated strength, the contractor then will have a subcontractor, PCI, come in, and they will mill about an inch off the entire deck and place a low slump overlay.
The whole deck?
Yes. Yep. That's to mitigate the new joints because of the full depth repair patch that was done, plus there were some finishing issues on the last 1/3 of the bridge where the concrete deck is a bit open and will allow salt and chlorides to get in that deck. And so by milling that off and coming back with that low slump overlay, that'll protect that deck for a very long time.
And the overlay will be how thick?
2 inches.
Okay.
Yeah, mill an inch off, come back with 2 inches. Those low slump overlays, you always.
And 2 inches will hold up pretty good?
Yes, they've been doing low slump overlays on bridges for many years. They have good
So
performance.
do you have a estimate of when it'll be open?
No, there's a fair amount of work even after the concrete part of the bridge work is done. We gotta finish grading out the approaches, bring in the aggregate base for the approach roadways. It's gotta be paved, and then the erosion control and seeding and whatnot all has to occur. And some of this is all dictated by when you get your anticipated strengths on those different concrete pours.
And as long as you're here, why don't you give an update number 12 for the other commissioners?
Number 12 is up and running. Mathewitz is out there starting to reconstruct the intersections of 21 and 12, where we'll be building right turn lanes and install intersection lighting. Yesterday they were removing the aggregate base, the old aggregate base out of that section. They were also beginning their mucking operation down in the flooded area, and that's where the new slopes are going out further than the original road core. They are taking out, we're trying to get out 3 to 4 feet of that existing mucky bottom. I watched the process for a while. It's gonna be a slow process. With a long reach excavator, you can only scoop out so much. What was good to see is that muck was pretty solid. It wasn't just like they're trying to scoop out soup. So every time he took a bucket, he'd get a nice big bucket of material. So that was good to see. Slow process. It'll take some time for them to muck out both sides. Once that happens, we'll install our settlement monitoring equipment, and they will start to fill that area with crushed rock. And so that's what's currently going on right now.
So will the replacement culvert come in during this process, or is that gonna be dug out and then set later?
Yes, the equalization culvert will be placed next year after the surcharge comes off. Surcharge comes off, then they'll dig the trench for that pipe. We didn't want to put the pipe in now, load it, and have
Slough away.
everything settling, and we're gonna have differential settlement, which would put
Right.
undue stress on that new pipe.
Thank you.
And this morning, the natural gas guys were back because they didn't put the natural gas line quite deep enough for construction. So they're digging
Oh.
next to it with a backhoe and gonna drop it in the hole
Oh, good.
and get it deeper.
Yeah, we have our weekly construction meeting out there today, so I'll get another update from the contractor on.
Thank you for
More
all your work.
questions for Seth? Anybody? Anything else you wanna add?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, since we're a little off schedule here, I would suggest we take our break now and reconvene at 10:05, if that's okay.
It's fine with me.
That'd be great.
Meeting back to order. Ryan, do you have some information?
I do, thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually 4 items today. The first one is a resolution supporting the Southern Minnesota RTCC to apply for Phase 2 funding. At the August board workshop, SRF Consulting gave a presentation on the Regional Transportation Coordinating Council, or RTCC, in Southern Minnesota. The North Mankato Area Planning Organization has hired SRF to complete a planning process to implement the RTCC in partnership with the Minnesota Department of Transportation. The RTCC will include representatives from transportation and human service providers, as well as other social service organizations and agencies from across an 8-county south central Minnesota region. The purpose of the RTCC is to coordinate the provision of transportation services throughout the region. As of yesterday, I reached out to SRF, and as of yesterday, Brown, Martin, and LeSueur County had passed the resolution. Blue Earth County and Nicollet County are considering it today, and September 1st, Faribault, Waseca, and Watonwan are planning to take action. So the resolution is attached in your packet. We have had staff from Human Services participating in this process. There is no funding commitment by the county to pass this resolution. This just takes it to the next stage, so I would recommend that the board approve the resolution.
Motion and a second. More discussion?
Multiple layers of MnDOT. My opinion.
We've been through that process with our transit organization too.
They plan more than they act sometimes.
Mr. Chair, on that question, Marie, can you just fill us in on how the transit use is going?
Well, again, Vine is our provider for transit, so it's their system to run, it's their numbers.
Right.
They have been free since the COVID
Pandemic.
outbreak, for lack of a better term. Their ridership is up primarily because other services have been discontinued. So, they are a modified dial ride at this point. There are no longer any routes because the route system wasn't working well. They have some expensive software that they shared with Brown County and the city of St. Peter, and they're still working to get the bugs out of that. I think Vine is pleased. I just think it's back to my comment, MnDOT just has layers and layers of bureaucracy, and this is just one more layer of it, and their transit whole gig is, and that's just my opinion, but, we spend more time planning than acting when it comes to MnDOT sometimes.
That's probably the same reason it takes 5 months for us to fix a road.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other questions? It's a resolution, so call the roll.
Kemp?
Yes.
Sparrow? Yes. Lippke?
Yes.
Drennel?
No.
Kohler?
Yes.
Next item, Mr. Chair, is a resolution appointing the Nicollet County Recorder and Register of Titles. Minnesota Statute 375A 1205 provides a process for making certain elected county offices appointed. With the retirement this past summer of elected county recorder Kathy Conlon, the board approved a resolution on July 14th making the office of county recorder and register of titles appointed. Under this statute, a petition was allowed to be filed within 30 days of adoption of the resolution rescinding the board's action. There was no petition filed. Statute also states that the duties of an elected official required by statute whose office is made appointive must be discharged by the County Board of Commissioners acting through a department head appointed by the board for that purpose. Reorganization, reallocation, delegation, or other administrative change or transfer does not diminish, prohibit, or avoid the discharge of duties required by statute. So basically it says the duties get transferred to a department head, and the county is able to reorganize as we see fit, but the duties still must be fulfilled. The attached resolution merges the duties of county recorder and register of titles into the Property and Public Service Department and appoints Property and Public Service Director Mandy Landcamer as the Nicollet County Recorder and Register of Titles. That resolution is attached, and I would recommend its approval.
Move the resolution.
Who was the second? Jack?
Jack.
Discussion? Questions?
Mandy's gonna need new business cards.
Gonna need a bigger card, yeah.
You're right.
Or really fine print.
Yeah, she'll still be Property and Public Service Director, but with that said, her name will be on, when you record a document. We are doing that, right? It'll say Mandy Landcamer, County Recorder, Register of Titles.
Further question, Mr. Chair, on the motion. Will there be any compensation awarded because of these this new title?
No, The amount of added duties does not generate a need for position reclassification. The recorder's office is a fairly small department and operation within the county, and in the past when we've merged small departments like Veteran Services into Health and Human Services and Emergency Management in the Sheriff's Office, that did not generate a change in compensation for that department head.
Just to dig a little deeper, the salary that was paid to the former recorder, those monies will go where?
So the staffing plan right now is we do have a supervisor within the recorder's office. That position will remain the same. We have several vacancies. We're actually going to fill 2 of them, 2 of the 3 vacancies we have. So the past recorder that was a department head earning department head salary, that position will no longer be paid at a department head level. It'll be paid at a much lower level, generating a savings of, let's say $40,000 approximately.
Thank you.
Now Mandy's not gonna have to sign off on every document, right?
No.
Those people.
Yeah, you in statute, you're allowed to deputize
Sure.
Your staff that have that authority to sign off, so.
That's what I
we've
assumed, yes.
Yeah, that's what we've, have always been doing, really.
Okay. Anybody else? Call the roll.
Yes.
Colors?
Yes.
Morrow?
Yes.
Lippke?
Yes.
Bell? Yes.
Okay, Ryan, number 3.
Next item is in regards to the CARES funding and implementing a business assistance program. As you know, the county received $4.1 million of federal CARES funds to assist with the cost associated with responding to the COVID pandemic. Business assistance grants are eligible expenditures of the Federal CARES Act funds under the U.S. Treasury Guidance, a business assistance program that provides grant assistance to eligible for-profit and nonprofit businesses in Nicollet County that can demonstrate being financially impacted by the COVID pandemic. Has been handed out to you today. The board also reviewed a version of it last week at our workshop. The application would be administered starting September 14th and due October 2nd. It would be online. Assuming the board hires Baker Tilly on the next action item, Baker Tilly will be assisting us on this process. Baker Tilly will host 2 webinars during the application period to answer questions that applicants may have. They've also just sent me here recently a frequently asked question document that we'll have on our website. What we plan to do if the board approves this today is we'll start marketing it this week and communicate with our cities to get the word out. We'll also do press releases and put it on social media and our website. Again, attached is the resolution approving the program that you have in front of you. One item that I would like to point out in the resolution, I don't know that it needs to be in there or not. I put it in there merely for flexibility. Where on the second, be it further resolved, it says after consultation with the Nicollet County Finance Director and County's Program Consultant, the Nicollet County Administrator is authorized to approve the final list of grant award recipients for this program. If the board wants to do the official approval, you certainly can. October 2nd is when they're due. Our board meeting, I believe, is the 13th of October that month. I think we'll have the final list ready for board approval then. There's some vacations in there that we're working around that may delay some of that, but if not, it would be extended to our next board meeting, which would be the end of October. I'd like to make the process faster than that. So the board could either approve it on the 13th. If we're not ready, give me the authority either now or then to approve it, or we schedule a special meeting to have the board formally approve the list. So.
Yes, Terry.
Thank you, Chair. I'm comfortable with having the administrator do the final approval
Right, absolutely. Obviously, the recipients and amounts is public data, so that would be provided to the board.
Mr. Chair, I'll move the resolution.
Second.
Motion and a second, discussion?
Well, Mr. Chair, I think I've shared with members, and I know some of you probably have visited with businesses too along the way. And I'm very pleased to see that you've extended this up to $10,000 because that can have a great impact on some of our businesses here in Nicollet County. And with respect to Commissioner Morrow's comment, I think it's important that this board sees who is taking advantage of this, just like we did with property taxes, property tax relief. And also, is it in here anywhere saying that federal taxes will be due on this money? I've tried to read it 2 or 3 times, but what number is that on?
So in the plan, under acknowledgements and data privacy, Nicollet County will issue grant recipients an IRS Form 1099. These grant funds are taxable.
Very good, thank you. Oh, and the other question, Mr. Chair, if you'll allow.
Yeah, go ahead, Jack.
When Baker Tilly holds these webinars or seminars with businesses who are interested, I take it, right?
Correct. Yep.
That information about those businesses is not shared beyond Baker Tilly, correct?
Correct.
Baker Tilly can't say, oh gee, look at this nice group of businesses that we can promote ourselves in other way, shape, or form too.
Right. They will, to my knowledge, they will not disclose the participant list, but there is an acknowledgement in here and in the application that applicant acknowledges that some data provided for this grant funding may be public and will be governed by the Minnesota Data Practices Law. So businesses should be aware that these are public funds and some of the information could become public if requested.
That much I understand. I don't know exactly, what does Baker Tilly do for a living every day?
They are a large company. They just merged actually with Springstead. And as the board knows, Baker Tilly is our municipal bond advisor. They were just here, actually last meeting, I believe, when we sold refunding bonds. That's part of their part of the services they provide. They also provide a wide variety of other government services, such as consulting, organizational structure, financial guidance, auditing, a wide variety of services. The ones that would be provided or available to us are in the next action item. So they're largely a consultant and financial advisor for units of government in the United States.
And I'm,
St. Paul.
excuse me?
St. Paul is where they're from.
We were just,
We're having a sidebar. They are a company that helps us with, because we don't have the personnel or the time to be able to do this, and that's great. All I'm asking is that when they talk to businesses, that they don't use that contact to glom onto those businesses somehow and push their own service.
No, I'm not even certain that they work with the private sector. I believe they're strictly a public sector advisors.
Thank you.
So one question, Ryan, say someone got $6,000 out of the government previously. They could apply here and get another 4?
So in the language, Commissioner Drannell assisted with this as well. There's many ways to word this and look at this, but to try to make it as, I hate to say fair, but as fair and equitable as possible. In the acknowledgement piece, I believe it's where it is. No, hang on a second here. Where did I put it?
eligible expenses.
Ineligible.
Oh, here we go, sorry. The grant amount requested cannot have been previously reimbursed by another federal or state program. For example, if the applicant received PPP loan and used it to cover rent expenses from March, April, and May of 2020, this grant may not be used to cover rent expenses for March, April, and May of 2020, but could be used to cover rent expenses for June of 2020.
Okay, thank you.
So no double dipping.
That kind of answers my question. Other questions?
It's hard to keep it simple.
It really is.
Yes, you have an open motion, I think.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you for working on it.
Any more discussion? Call to roll.
Yes.
Morrow.
Yes.
Lippke.
Yes.
Gretel. Yes. Kohler.
Yes.
And the last item related to this action you just took would be to approve a master service agreement with Baker Tilly. That was provided to you here today and by email. This agreement basically allows the county to use Baker Tilly as a consultant and advisor throughout the CARES funding process, up to a dollar amount of $50,000. There's several things that we possibly could use them for as we move along to get clarification and to assist with auditing and those sorts of things. For the business assistance piece, they're putting a not to exceed of $29,750 in there. I don't believe it's gonna be that much because we've done a lot of the legwork here already. Sometimes they're involved from the very beginning of building these plans, but we had it basically ready for them. So it should be much less than that. So I would recommend that the board approve that agreement and allow me to sign off on that, and that it would be approving the business assistance portion, and then the additional funds should Heather or I need assistance from them. And this can be paid for with the CARES funding that we received.
I'll move that.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? And you're comfortable with the dollar price that they're telling us?
Yes, I'm very comfortable. We've
Okay.
gotten great service actually from them already without having the contract signed, and I did get a quote from a regional potential provider that was double this for just the
Very
business
good question.
portion.
Baker Tilly takes the risk of liability and assumes that liability and takes it off county staff and our hands.
Right.
And you,
It's like buying an insurance policy to some extent.
exactly, and there is a cost.
That
to
has
it.
value. and
Sure.
Yeah, really, I'm very happy with the price that they're offering.
More discussion? Call to roll.
Yes.
Morrow.
Yes.
Lippke.
Yes.
Gretel. Yes. Kohler.
Thank you. Passes.
That is it for me today, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Well, since we had our last meeting, I went to 2 ISG drainage seminars, and they were pretty good, except for the one lady that kept breaking up. We had, what, 2 budget meetings, Terry, probably? Okay. And the workshop. And of all things, besides the gun club, I've been getting calls about issues with the DOT on the Highway 14 expansion and on safety on Highway 15. Actually, 2 different parties on Highway 15. Visited with Peter and Zach a little bit. Hopefully they were gonna contact the people who had the problems. Terry?
Like you just said, John, 2 budget meetings. We had a meeting, the St. Peter liaison meeting. Marie and I were in our St. Peter. Also, Marie and I both participated in the fresh food distribution last Friday. And if, Mr. Chair, if you just give me one moment here, we have an email from Leah that 204 households were served, which is the highest count they've had for a Fresh Food Friday in the past 3 years, and that 67 of those households were first-time visitors. So I just would like to acknowledge all the volunteers who are out helping and the great leadership that Leah has shown.
And on that note, my wife helped in Brown County
Wonderful.
yesterday, went across the border. Denny?
last gathering of reports, I had a statewide emergency communication board's finance meeting, our board workshop, which we were all in attendance of, and I had the SHIP quarterly meeting also. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Marie?
I had a Region 9 Board of Directors Zoom meeting. I also attended part of the drainage conference, or it was running in the background. They had some issues with technology. Board workshop, liaison committee. I attended the food access meeting prior to the district.
Oh, right, that's right.
Once it gets set up, it goes really fast, but getting it set up takes the volunteers. So if anybody likes to bust down produce, they're certainly welcome. Mandy helped us with pears. I also attended the Zoom meeting for the elected women, it meets monthly, food distribution. And then yesterday I sat through AMC's CARES Act webinar for a couple of hours. It was interesting to hear what other counties were or were not doing. It was, I think they're gonna replay it at some point on their website, and it's well worth watching.
Okay, Jack?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. August 14th, the canvassing of the primary vote, which our elections officials, Jackie told us, was very well completed. A lot of people voting via mail, and more expected on November 3rd. We had our Minnesota Valley Action Council meeting, the workshop, of course, another Greater Mankato Growth meeting where I shared with you folks via email some of the reports that have been coming in from the various entities belonging to that board. Our Traverse to Sioux meeting, and of course today's county board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. No report from the Republican Convention for you, or?
Pardon me?
No report, you're not carrying any report from the Republican Convention, I assume?
I was watching the Twins last night.
Okay.
Pretty good.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I just could acknowledge the work of Health and Human Services helping our schools getting started. As I'm hearing around the state, there are differing levels of county support, and it sounds like our folks are doing a bang-up job.
Wonderful. The other?
I'd also parrot that, but in addition, the county attorney's office has been making good communication with a lot of players within the community on a lot of issues. And again, I really appreciate that, and I think those building of relationships are incredibly important for all of us going forward. So I want to offer our county attorney and her staff, those that have been doing this work, a thank you for that.
Okay. Ryan, any meetings and conferences?
Everything is by virtual meeting processes.
Motion on per diems?
Move it. I'll move per diems and expenses.
I'll second that.
Motion second, discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, passes.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Mr.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
If I just wanted to report, to follow up on the reports on the food distribution. The backpack school supply, we will be announcing a winner shortly for in the county. I got a couple of later donations that we need to add to the totals for the county department winner. I think we have a new winner from last year. But the distribution of backpacks will happen on Thursday to the families that signed up. And so thank you to the board for participating and supporting those efforts to serve kids and families that need those back to school supplies. So thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, passes. Take a 5-minute break or start right away with drainage?
That's cool.
Okay, let them in.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to
Yes.
step out one moment, but please go ahead.
Okay,
Maybe, do you want to take a couple minutes just to let the crowd
Sure.
yeah, settle in?
Sign in anyway, so it'll take a little bit.
okay,
That's 5 minutes, John.
okay. Drainage Authority meetings come to order. Jackie, you're up.
We've got some business before that.
Go.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We have an agenda.
Yeah, consent agenda,
Move the consent agenda.
Second.
discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes. And number 2 is what we're on, right?
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The purpose of today's hearings are for ditch cleaning requests for 3 separate ditches. Those ditches are 16A, County Ditch 24A, and County Ditch 48A. We will handle each one of those individually and in that order.
If I could, there was one to set the hearing for a ditch cleaning.
Was that afterwards? Oh, is that the first
I just
agenda item?
remembered.
I'm sorry, I thought that was after.
Oh, that's fine.
16A is first, right?
Because this is the
No.
public hearing?
Oh,
Is the public hearing.
This is the public hearing? Okay.
we have to set a public hearing.
I'm sorry about that. So the first thing on the agenda is to set the date for an additional public hearing for an additional cleaning for 30A, and I'd like to set that for September 8th at 10 a.m.
Move it.
Motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes.
Okay, now on to the public hearing. Like I said, it's for those 3 ditches, 16A, 24A, and 48A, and we will do those in those orders. Nate Henry will be presenting the cleaning information. This meeting has been noticed to all landowners by mail only, as publication and posting is not required for this meeting. That mailing was sent out on August 10th, 2020. So I would ask Nate Henry to come up to present the first ditch cleaning for 16A.
Morning, Nate.
Good morning. County Ditch 16A, I received a repair request from Dave Wenninger to clean a section of this ditch. It's not very large, approximately 6,000 feet, and he is one of the major affected landowners that own property along this section. And the last time this section of ditch was cleaned was 25 years ago. So that puts a little bit of perspective on what type of condition it is. It's common to clean ditches every 12 to 15 years. Longer than that, the sediment just builds up and it costs more to do.
Okay. Questions for Nate? We'll open the public hearing. Any comments on 16A? Okay, is there a motion?
Move it.
No, you gotta close the public
Oh,
hearing.
sorry. Public hearing is closed. Board discussion?
I think Commissioner Kolar's moved and I'll second.
Okay. Motion second. Now any discussion? Questions for Nate or anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Okay.
The
We'll
next
go
one,
to
24A, I believe, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So similar thing here on 24A, I received a repair request to clean this ditch. The map that you have, the area that was petitioned for would be starting on the north end of the ditch along Timber Lane, coming south into the center of section 22 is what was originally requested by the landowner. I have met with the landowner as well as looked at the rest of the ditch, and I have indicated the entire ditch in green is in need of a clean out. And if we're going to be doing a small section for that property down there, it would be wise to do the rest of the ditch while the equipment is there. Little background on this ditch. This was petitioned in 2017, and at that time the petition was denied, and part of that petition was a tree removal project along Timber Lane because that had never been done, and the cost of the tree removal project was $15,000 from Carr's Tree Service, and the clean out was denied, but the tree removal was approved, and that work has been done, and the trees are now gone. The last time this ditch was cleaned was in 1991, so 29 years ago. And after the denial of that petition, there was some more discussion with the petitioning landowner about how to move forward to do the project or prove it needs to be cleaned. So I reached out to an engineering firm to see if they would provide services to survey the ditch and give us an exact number in hundredths and tenths of material that is in the ditch. And at that time in 2017, we would have been able to do that for $10,700. And that would strictly be a report saying they were out and surveyed the ditch and they determined this much dirt is in there. So at that time, we decided not to do that because $10,700 could be put to better use towards cleaning the ditch. So there was no action taken with that. So that's where we're at right now, and I think there'll be some folks that would like to talk about this one.
Okay, open the public hearing. If you want to speak, state your name, address, and is the 3-minute limit there this also? I assume, yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Yes, yes, please, thank you.
My name is Steve Michaels, at 39857 506th Street, North Mankato. I'm a landowner along this ditch system. You were given 3 pieces of paper here earlier from the majority of the landowners that are along this ditch system. I am told that I am to speak on their behalf. I have come here today on behalf of the majority of the landowners along County Ditch 24A. A couple years ago, the buffer was forced onto every landowner. Land that was productive is now not, nor collecting rent or any income. Also, a couple years ago, there was a cleanup of trees along this ditch system that we are still paying assessments on. Personally, me, between the buffer and this trees that they took out, which needed to be done, I just on my 160, I'm paying $5,000 in assessments on top of the taxes. So it's, we just don't need another big bump on top of everything else here. Where's all this money supposed to come from? And now with this COVID and below break-even commodity prices, times a person with less than 5% ownership in the system wants to set us all back some more. Where is this money supposed to come from? No, we are not naive enough to the fact that to know that some of this ditch system needs some work. Just a more limited approach is what we ask on behalf of these landowners. Until commodity prices rebound a little bit. Our proposal is to fix, there's 2 main washouts, and I don't, Nate probably knows where they are. There's 2, not washouts, but slides. And the bridge needs to be fixed, and to clean from the bridge south to Mr. Burnett's land. That would alleviate a lot of the problems that he tends to have, I guess, with that little bit of ditch that he has. So that's my presentation.
Thank you. Excuse me, anybody else want to come up? Close the public hearing. Oh, sorry.
I also have a letter from a landowner that was mailed to me, and it is from Nate Johnson, and his address is 47874 380th Street, Nicollet, Minnesota 56074. To whom it may concern, I don't believe the ditch needs to be cleaned. It appears to be working as it is intended. No amount of cleaning will help when we get 5 inches of rain at a time. We are in the middle of a pandemic and do not need any more bills right now. Not all of us sold our land for houses and are flush with cash. Nate Johnson.
Thank you, Jackie. Anybody else?
I'm Steve Burnett, and I'm the one that wanted the ditch cleaned, and it hasn't been cleaned in a lot of years. And I see their point, but I don't care what you do as long as you get it working from mine down. And those slides have to be taken out of there, and there might need to be some work done on the end by the road down there, because that's really in bad shape. And as long as they go along there and clean out wherever it needed, where it's blocked, then don't do the whole ditch, but it does need cleaning. The whole ditch does need it. But I see their point, but gotta get them slides out of there and gotta be made to work, so.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good for the public hearing?
Mr. Chair, can I ask you a
Yes.
question of Nate? Maybe those photos are deceiving, but what's the depth of this ditch? Do you know, and how much has it filled in? Do you know that?
So the depth of the sediment in the bottom or the depth of the banks?
It's the original, it just looks to me like it's flat. I mean,
The
maybe
photos
it's
kind of
the
wash
direction
out,
the photos.
they wash out the depth. Looking at, well,
It's fairly deep, Jack. I was out there.
it's pretty deep. It ranges from, I don't know, 20 to 40 feet in different areas. The culvert that you see in there, I forgot to include that in my original report. Regardless of what happens to the clean out, that culvert needs to be repaired. Because the ends, what's happening is it's a concrete pipe that was put in place 80 years ago, and they never tied the ends together. So what happens is the frost moves and they separate, they leak fill, and the top is collapsed. You can maybe drive a four-wheeler across it. So there's large amounts of dirt there that have to be removed, and the crossing has to be fixed one way or another. As far as dirt in the ditch, I started down by Timber Lane and I drove up through behind down into section 22, and it varied from 2 feet of water in the crossing in section 15 to this one being by that I just described to you has about 3 feet. So as far as picking out one spot to dig a slide here and there, if we dig out a slide here and then you just leave the rest of it that hasn't been cleaned in 30 years, that's going to silt in. You're going to be back to square one in a year. If cleaning the entire ditch is not desired, at the very minimum, I would say we could start at where the petitioner's property outlets and go from the center of section 22 down to the outlet of the ditch. Would be the next best bet, along with fixing that ditch crossing.
And I was out there with Nate, and that crossing is a danger. I think everybody would agree with that. And there is some spots that are pretty bad.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Nate, could I ask you to use the pointer on the map so that it's real clear about all the references? Not on the pictures, but there was a map section that was included in that, I think. And can you guide me through that so I'm clear about that?
So what I had said about the very minimum cleaning would be
From Timber Lane?
Would be from Timber Lane, come along the ditch, and then you go straight south to where the ditch will terminate in the center of section 22. If the landlords do not want us to go west for that quarter of a mile, we don't have to. I think it would be an excellent idea if we do, because we'll stop and then that silt will fill in what we just cleaned. But at the very minimum, I think we should come to the center of section 22 to where Steve Burnett's tile outlets are. Otherwise, spot cleaning, random spots in the middle of the ditch will work for a year or two, and then we'll be right back next year doing the exact same thing.
Again, double the cost.
Terry, did you make it out for a visit to the
Nate, if I could ask you a question, Mr. Chair. Could you just tell me the culvert you're describing, would that be part of this type of process, or is that a different process to?
It would be a ditch repair. Granted, this is considered a ditch repair, but I could do it at any time, but I would just like to include it now to get it approved so we don't have to write another repair.
So if I can understand the priority, culvert, the shorter section, the full project, are those?
Right. Those are your really three. I mean, the culvert has to get there's no reason to clean the ditch if you don't fix the culvert, because it's completely collapsing, obstructing the flow. So.
Okay.
Public hearing is closed, but we have a gentleman.
Mr. Michaels wanted to speak again.
I just had a comment on, can you bring up that map again? Nate,
I'm describing, is right here on the section line.
Yep, it's north of that, yep, right there. Okay, fix that culvert, which we all know that that's bad, and then work south, which is a quarter of a mile of a deep peat bog. That's where all of these problems are coming. You clean that out, and the water should sail, because you get up into around 13 there, that's a huge deep ditch, and it looks like it was just dug, yesterday. It doesn't look bad at all, and then you get around the corner and there's one slide. Other than that, it doesn't look that bad, from what I understand from the landowners,
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Perry.
So Nick, could the culvert part of this be approved today? Or is that a separate process?
That could be approved anytime.
That can be approved anytime, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
That slide is to the north of where that culvert is.
There's
That
another, I
slide.
might have a picture of that, Abby. Could you pan through that, so I'll tell you when to stop? Keep going. Okay, right here. So this is looking north if you were standing on the crossing. So there's an additional bank slide and water running over the ditch. You can see where the corn rows were planted around it because it's eroding back into the field.
Okay.
take that out and it don't look that bad. There's another one on the south side of that field also.
This ditch has many repairs in the past of water flowing over the banks. There's a lot of surface intake pipes, so like a 24-inch pipe coming into the ditch just to take the water and hold the bank from falling in. And that's where a lot of the dirt and silt comes from. It's not perfect, but it's better than the whole bank falling in.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So Nate, if I can understand, so could we, let's keep that picture if we could, Abby, for a moment, thank you. So the culvert, there's discussion of whether to clean the whole thing. I thought I heard you say something earlier about the number of slides that are in this system. Now we're just hearing about fix this one and another slide. I'm getting lost on what all the different options are here.
Typically in the past, when we've piecemealed projects and did a little bit here and there, we've ended up coming back until
Okay.
it's all done versus
Mm-hmm.
either you do the whole thing or you do a good portion of it so that you don't have to do the whole project. You can come back at a later date and do the rest if that's what people would like to do.
Well, I don't believe we can wait for $4 corn to do some work on this. So, Madam County Attorney, if we don't approve the whole suggestion, we can piecemeal it and,
The board has heard a presentation from, well, it's got the petition, it's heard input from other landowners, it's heard the recommendation of the ditch inspector, and now it's time for the board to put together its recommendation, so you can, address all, part, or none of what the request is.
Okay.
But I would echo what Commissioner Morrow indicated, to be very clear on what you're authorizing for the cleaning repair, because I'm also with Commissioner Morrow in terms of understanding the different options that might be before you and what you might motion. So there's a culvert that needs to be repaired, there's a number of slides that are talked about,
and the crossing.
and the crossing, there's a smaller suggested portion for cleaning and the larger portion. I'm unclear whether those slides would be encompassed in that smaller portion or not. And that might help articulate what's going on in terms of the motion, and it might be helpful if I could suggest, if Abby's comfortable with it, that Nate would actually take, as you're formulating your motion, take his cursor, or take the actual mouse and take control of where he's specifically talking about on that map, so that everyone is very clear what's being discussed.
So, Mr. Chair, if I could follow up, and if Nate, you could do that,
Yeah, that's a great
I
idea.
envision a motion, I envision supporting a motion in which the culvert gets done and at least some portion gets finished, but I'd like to hear from Nate what portions would we be talking about?
I'm gonna pull up the map of the. So, perhaps a motion, could include cleaning the open ditch from Timber Lane down through section 15 and going south into section 22 where it terminates, and then go west approximately 1 mile would encompass the clean out. And also the motion to include fixing the ditch crossing that we had talked about on the center line of section 15 and 22. Or the section line, I mean, not center line.
So Nate, did you just describe the full project, or is that just a portion of the project?
Well, that's a portion that sounds like the audience and people would like to do. And if we're gonna do it, that's what I would feel most comfortable with. If people don't wanna spend the money to do the entire project, this would take care of the petitioner's problem, it would take care of the ditch crossing, and it would cost less than doing the entire system.
That wasn't our proposal.
That is not that is what I propose. That may not be what everybody does, but I think that would be, rather than piecemealing small sections, that would be the best bang for the buck as far as moving equipment in and digging.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes.
the proposal we have before us is from
I haven't seen that proposal, I've
the
just heard
Burnett.
about it.
The request is to clean
Okay.
up the ditch, right?
Right, we have Burnett's petition, I have not
Yeah.
seen the other proposal.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Cleaning that shorter section or portion of it would take care of all of the slides that have been mentioned?
No, that would just take care of the petitioner's, concerns.
The slides are beyond,
There's additional slides further on in the system that doesn't encompass. And they can be addressed with a ditch repair at a later time. That's a typical ditch repair we fix all the time. There's nothing special about that.
Yes.
I know this is irregular, and so I ask for a ruling, but I'm a little confused between the discussion that Mr. Michaels brought up and I just wanna be clear that I understand both sides of this, and could I ask him to display on the same map the area that he's talking about?
Me?
Well, I need to, no, I can't ask you yet. I just wanna make sure that I'm staying within.
I think because we're dealing with maps and requests that may be nebulous in what we're talking about, I think it's appropriate to have that articulated on the map for what we're talking about. So having him just make that presentation would be appropriate.
Is that acceptable, Nate? You okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, Mr. Michaels, would you come up and,
I can maybe show you.
well, no.
He's tall enough.
Yeah, whatever. You wanna stand in
Slide
front of
over
it, that's
Nate's
fine.
taller
I just need to understand it in a visual way.
Yeah, we can't really see that here.
See, there's, what you were looking at before, there was a slide like right there.
Could you go over by
Mr.
Why
Terry?
don't you come over this side? This is the one we all see.
Okay, sorry.
You all folks live with this, we don't see them as,
What your drawing was, there was a slide right there, right?
Yep.
Okay, there's also another one right there in the middle of, between there, and there's another one up here that I'm aware of. That's what I was told by the landowners. Those are the only ones in that whole system. But what's the worst is the bridge is right there where that exits. That needs to be, that's where the culvert, that's what you're talking about. That needs to be addressed. And then and this is a big peat bog right here. This is where all your problems are generating. So if we clean that slide, and that slide, and take from the bridge and clean the bottom down to Steve Burnett's land, which is down here, is our proposal. It might seem like a piecemeal, but it's probably gonna last for years, potentially.
Nate, do you have comments on that, or?
Do you have any questions? I'm sorry.
yeah, I just need to understand your proposal and So your proposal would be fix the crossing and then merely go in and fix the slides,
And then a quarter of a mile
a quarter mile cleaning
cleaning
from Mr. Barnett's property.
north
North.
to the bridge. Or to the culvert. It's a kind of a homemade bridge going across.
Gotcha, okay.
That's where that culvert is washed out or bad.
Okay. All right, thank you.
That's
That's the only question I have.
Yep, I mean,
I just wanted to make sure, I thought I had it right, I just wanted to make sure that,
this was the proposal from about 90% of the landowners.
I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Burnett, would that serve you?
Yeah. All I wanted this to work, but I know that down by the road, you know, that area down in there where it goes, before it goes into the creek, is not in real good shape. But there's gotta be a lot of fall from my property to there, because the ditch runs downhill. So, it probably worked for now, but down there, it's not much of it's kind of a trail if you, I don't know if he's got pictures of that, right along the road there and that, it's not
Mr.
much.
Chair?
Yes.
So Nate, what is the most economical long-term, even though it may cost a few extra dollars now, to get this thing done?
If you were to not take into consideration low commodity prices, cleaning the entire ditch system, if you were to take into consideration then cleaning that section I described, and if you really don't wanna spend much, well, we'll do whatever the board decides. I'm just here to provide the facts and information, and
So I guess when I was asking in terms of economical, the best investment is your first proposal is what I think I'm hearing.
right, the ditch hasn't been cleaned in 30 years, and they silt in over time. It was needed in 2017 when it was denied, and that's what I would recommend at the very minimum to serve the petitioner's request. Cleaning that shorter segment and repairing the crossing, I think would best fit his concern.
Yes, Terry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Nate, I'm just trying to understand this repair process. I hear what you're saying. I mean, in terms of economical, it may be cost effective to do the whole thing, but it may not be economically feasible for the folks who pay for it. I think you and I probably agree on that point, it sounds like everyone is saying they agree on the culvert, and perhaps even they agree on, well, if you want, just do the slides, and if everyone will agree on doing the slides, we're good. What I don't understand about our process is, and maybe Commissioner Kolar, this gets to your point as well, I don't know what the cost difference is on any of these. I don't know if anyone in the room knows. They just know that it would be cheaper to do the slides than to do what you're saying. But I don't know if we know the dollar differences. Is that fair?
Right, that's a fair assessment. Usually, I'll just use a real rough estimate here. If we were to clean the entire ditch system, we're probably looking at around 50 to 60,000 for the entire system.
For the entire system,
Yep.
okay.
And that would be
That includes the crossing
No,
repair?
nope, that's just ditch cleaning and leveling.
Just the cleaning?
Okay. And that's the entire ditch or the
That'd
portion
be
that you showed?
That'd be the entire system.
Okay.
Now, that's what 16,000 feet is. I don't have an exact measurement on the shorter section. It looks to be about 1.5 miles.
So 7,000 feet, give or take.
You're looking at about 25 grand.
What I'm worried about, and I think it's along the lines of what Commissioner Kolar is saying, is if we were to approve just doing the slides and the culvert today, and then we find out 2 weeks from now, you know what? The difference in that cost and the cost of doing that portion, that 1.5 and a half. Maybe all the landowners say, okay, fine, yeah, let's do that portion because we're gonna come back and have to do it again anyway, and that's Jack's economical point.
Well, the problem with scooping the slides out is that we'll take out the slide where there might be 4 feet of dirt, but then where do you stop? Because you'll take out this slide area, and then over here, there's gonna be 2 feet of dirt in the ditch. Well, I guess you just leave a 2-foot ridge of dirt and, you know, you go on from there. So where do you start and where do you stop if you just pick a few spots? That's why I recommended doing one complete segment, so you can start and have it clean from one end to the other, and maybe the other branches can get addressed at a later date when those landowners want to.
Yes, Marie.
Nate, on average, how often do we clean a system? I know soil types and topography has that, but is it oftener than every 30 years?
Yeah, 12 to 15 years for people that are aggressive in it, and then of course if you're doing it every 15 years, you're taking out less dirt, you move faster, it's cheaper. Taking out more dirt, rather than taking one scoop with the bucket, you may take 2 or 3, and then leveling it in the field, it's going to of course take a lot longer to level it. So.
And the flip side, if we don't do this, this isn't in jeopardy of failing.
Well, I wouldn't say the ditch is in jeopardy of failing. The surrounding cropland that drains into it is in jeopardy of drowning.
And Marie, the ditch next to me, I think it was 50 years since it was cleaned, but that was way in the top end of it. Less land going into it. More questions for Nate?
Should all of it be clean?
Well, I think, if I might, Mr. Chair, what I'm hearing is an effort to do work that's needed to be done, and at least arguably is twice overdue, 15 years to 30 years, and at the same time recognize the economic realities that are facing the landowners. And so I think what I hear you saying, Nate, is here is perhaps an acceptable, not acceptable, a reasonable solution, is to fix the culvert, address this section. Don't just do the slides, because that's probably, to Commissioner Kollar's point, not economically reasonable, because you're not doing the full job, and you're still leaving parts unaddressed. You're probably gonna have to come back and do again anyway. So why not do the job right, but not do the whole ditch, because that would be an expense that perhaps we don't have to impose upon the landowners at this time. So that's why what I hear Nate saying about the full ditch, sure, do the full ditch if the economics weren't in play, but the economics are in play.
But, Mr. Chair, when aren't the economics in play?
Well,
That's true.
Mr. Chair, absolutely, they always are, Jack. But I think that the mention, for example, of commodity prices, and we've heard this from a number of our landowners. If Nate's approach is one that, I think in some ways balances the need to do something about the ditch. The ditch needs to be repaired, and maybe can do it in a way that has less of an impact upon farmers at a time in which they're already being hit, might be a reasonable compromise.
More questions?
I got 2. Do you have an estimate for that bridge at all, Nate?
Not a real confident one. It'd be less than $10,000.
For the crossing you're talking?
It's concrete, so we'll just dig the dirt off on top of it, sit on top of it with an excavator and push those sections of pipe together, assuming they're in good shape, which usually they are. Use a hammer drill to drill holes in it, and then install adjustable ties, and wrap it with fabric and mastic, cover it back up so it'll never move again.
Okay, second question is, does anybody know what's in the kitty for this ditch system?
Jackie?
I don't.
Okay.
I can certainly check that out.
We're getting off track here a little bit, huh?
I would say there's not an abundance of money in any ditch system, because
Okay.
you can
Thank you.
20% of the benefits. So I
Okay.
wouldn't rely on that.
That's Michelle.
Mr. Chair, might I suggest that it sounds to me like everyone wants to balance all of the interests that are involved, long-term, short-term economics, that perhaps this matter be, the final decision be delayed for 2 weeks with direction to staff to articulate on paper the 3 options that I understand to be on the table, the whole system, the partial pieces of the 3 slides and the culvert, and then cleaning out the peat bog area, or the longer section that Nate is recommending, and put some actual numbers to paper. Jackie can look at what's in the kitty, and then everyone is on the same page for what you're actually considering in the costs involved. And it would be a 2-week
So we would
delay.
continue this hearing.
Continue the hearing, correct?
The only question I have is, do you think that would limit you getting people to do that this fall yet?
I don't think crops will be coming out in 2 weeks, so that shouldn't affect it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move continuation of this matter to our next,
Regular meeting? Drainage authority.
our drainage authority meeting, which could be convened in 2 weeks. Or, well, our first meeting of the next month. I'd like to see more data and more clear. I just think it's in everyone's best interest to do it that.
Second.
That would be my motion.
Motion second?
I think you should put a time to that, a specific time.
Oh,
So
because
like
it's a
when it's-
continuation,
Yeah.
should we make it 10,
We have a 10 o'clock hearing already.
10:30.
make it 10:30?
10:15.
10:15?
Yeah, what, 13th or?
You can always start after.
Right, but, okay, so 10:15 on the
September 8th.
8th? Oh, okay. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Thank everyone for
Yes.
your input, and we're trying to drill down, and we appreciate your patience with us also. We really do.
No. County Ditch 48A?
Michelle, do you want to comment on this?
Jackie, does?
Mr. Chair, before the board today is a public hearing on 48A. And yesterday it was brought to my attention that there's an engineering report
Okay.
where there's some additional work that is being recommended in the engineer report that I think we received on Friday. So there hasn't been a lot of time to gather the information, and there may or may not need to be a separate decision made by the board that might need to be made before you order the repair.
Okay.
And that would need to be properly noticed and information presented to the board so that the board could consider that issue plus the repair issue. So in light of that fact, Mr. Chair, it would be my recommendation that if there are landowners here to speak on the, because it's already been noted as a public hearing, if there are landowners here that wish to speak, that you either allow that or if they choose, or they come back when we have the full hearing, again, hopefully in 2 weeks, to have a better presentation to the board to address the recommendations of the engineer.
So is there anyone here from 48A?
Mr. Chair, before you do that, if I might ask
Yes.
you and our county attorney, I'd be inclined to continue this hearing as well, since that report just came in. I would hate to say, well, you spoke before you had all the
Right.
information,
Okay.
and so we're gonna have to do this again in 2 weeks anyway.
So just go right to a
I would
motion?
continue this.
And that's fine.
I'm sorry, sir.
Unless,
I won't be able to make that next meeting.
Okay.
But I have been working on this for many years. And with the DNR and things, there is some issues in
Okay.
the engineering thing. Also, Nate, do you have any pictures of the ditch or the?
No, I don't know. We don't have them right
Okay, I
now.
do have a little bit on my iPad here. I should have brought a stick. We could have downloaded it up there.
Sir, if I could interrupt you just 1 second, because I think we can, Mr. Chair, I think we can open the public hearing.
yes.
Okay.
Let the, then you can come up and speak, and then we can continue the hearing. I'm sorry to have interrupted you, sir.
No, that's fine.
And to be clear, the issues that I'm speaking about aren't necessarily addressing concerns that the cleaning isn't needed. It's just the procedural pieces that need to occur to get to what you've been working on.
My name is Gene Dorn. I live in Nicollet, Granby Township, and my address is 42113 451st Avenue. I've been working and over the DNR numerous times, and this ditch system, which is 48A, which goes through Duck Lake and drains directly into, do you have maps in front of you?
We do
Of
have a map.
48A?
Mhm. We have it in our packet.
Okay, all right. I'll try to bring up here, if I can pass this around to you, of, there's a situation where there is a culvert going through, and do we have Wi-Fi in here?
Yes.
Okay, is there the public that it's
Yes,
open?
you'll have to log into it.
I'll have to log into it, okay.
Yep.
While he's doing that, would that be a bad deal to or to continue this for 4 weeks until Mr. Dorn might be available again?
Okay. I hate to push it off more
Okay.
than it is. It's been a long time.
Okay, that's fine.
But,
Well, while you're waiting to log in, does the map that's on the electronic board here represent the areas? Are they familiar to you, and does that make sense to you?
yes, and I could probably stand up and point some of that out.
That would be
Please
helpful
do that.
if you could get us started there.
Yep. Now, Nate may have to reaffirm this. 48A is up here, comes, crosses under Highway 5, Road, comes down along here. It drains through the lake, and then actually 48A is a continuation of 48A through Duck Lake. And then down here, I'll get on this side so you guys can see it better. It joins out, and it goes eventually into Middle Lake. I grew up not far from here, and I trapped this in 1966. And I believe that's the last time that ditch was cleaned. That's 54 years ago. I've had, who's the other guy that comes out with him, his name?
Steve.
Steve. He's been out different times over time, said that he was probably gonna spray this, he was gonna do different things. Now with what DNR did with the outlet of Middle Lake, they raised it up 2/10, which is approximately 2.5 inches. It is so wet along here. Thank you.
The old fashioned way.
Yeah, it is so wet along here that I'm really concerned we're only gonna be limited to go in with an excavator when it freezes up. And then you come into the issue with snow. This is so filled in with muck all the way across, and then also out here. So that's been 54 years since this has been cleaned up. Up here, this originally was 48, and then I forget what year this was changed to 48A, because it used to come along. The people that live up on this ditch are a little more concerned with the bottom end of this ditch and along number 5. The water is so high. And it takes so long to get out of here, and with the rains we've been having for a number of years. Right down here, DNR has, when they acquired this fawning farm, there's a culvert going across. That culvert now, I have some pictures of it, is approximately 2 feet or better out of the ground. But it's a large culvert, because I used to trap, here's where I live. I used to trap from here, I'd go through with a 17-foot canoe right through with the motor. I think it may be a 48-inch. And going through here, now, in the times that I've been there, that's been lowered a few times when it was private property, because Weber, the next door neighbor, when he crossed with his plow, he'd hook it with the plow, have to be lowered. Well, since DNR acquired this land, nothing's been done. It's really pushing up. With the high water so far, it has not really restricted the water much, but it does help with sediment up here holding back and everything, because it's not flowing through. Plus, this is all growed in all the way along. We've got muskrats in there, we've got some trees growing in. There's so much sediment, it's unbelievable. So we need to get this out. Then I think our next thing is ditch 41, which is the outlet, and getting through Middle Lake of doing some other things, but that's a different hearing. But this is what I'm really concerned about, and Larry Wilking is in here, he's a neighbor, he lives right here. He has this land, they've got the same thing, we've got water sitting in this along 5, and it's just not getting out of that lake the way it should. And like you say, you talk about ditches cleaned every 15, 20 years. The last time, because the first time I met with Jackie a number of years ago, she didn't realize that that was even a county ditch. And she told me you open up a can of worms. Well, I probably did. But nothing's ever been done. I met with the DNR, and I think that's what this hearing, Michelle, coming up, that they are telling me, what are you gonna do with the spoils? Well, I've got some elevation issues on some things when we flew it with the drone. There originally was, when I used to hunt there, it was a great place to stand for deer hunting because they'd always come on one side.
Sure.
I mean, let's be realistic. I think in time, but that's something I guess you gotta follow through procedures of what it is. But I just wanted to tell you the situation that I think we are working with that are up here. I did do some, I used to own this here. I did some training with DNR to acquire this up here. But again, this is all flowing out. I've been out there since 1980, and in the last few years, I have never, well, it's a lot been since they raised that dike going out of Middle Lake, and with the wet weather, we're fighting an issue if we don't get in this fall, and I don't think it's gonna happen this fall because of timing and the things that need to be done, but it's something to get started on, because it's really something needs to be done. Because I don't wanna end up like where John is up there on number 12.
Underwater?
Yeah, so, but I guess that's about,
Terry, you
any
have a
questions?
I do, thank you, Mr. Dorn. Where's Doug Winter's property at?
Okay, Doug Winter, and okay, we can, if you don't mind me talking, he's over here. And what Doug Winter did last year is he paid for that cookie cutter. He got permit from DNR. It helped us a lot.
And what, is it on this map what he did?
No, we'd
Okay.
have to get down to Middle Lake,
Okay.
and I don't know if we have something of
That's
that.
okay, but it's not this portion.
No, and he come up into Wee Wee Bay over in here, and that is a big issue, what that is, and I do feel in time, because to me, this is a ditch system, 48A. Middle Lake goes out on, what is it, Jackie, 41?
Ditch 4 goes out.
Ditch 4, okay, ditch 4. To me, that's all part of a ditch system. What Doug Winter did, he come along with that cookie cutter that DNR so many years ago said it was too costly. Now, when I met with them last summer and last fall, they said they gotta do something. The duck hunters are saying we can't get to those areas because I said, the farmers are paying for this, and the duck hunters that little bit of a hunting license. But anyway, he got that same cookie cutter come out of northern Minnesota, come down. I think it cost him close to $10,000, but that's a short fix.
Okay.
I do think in time, they've done some studies, DNR on Minnesota Lake, I believe, of spraying Roundup, which is rodeo for, it's aquatic. You can spray water. And you're looking at killing that rushes down to the root system, and usually it can last from 2 to 5 years or better. When you cut with a cookie cutter, you're only cutting so many inches underneath. Rushes grow fast. Plus, it's still holding the sediment up. So I'd like to, but that is gonna be a different hearing.
Okay.
But this is basically what we're at today.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, much clearer now. Terry, you got more questions?
No, that's good.
And Mr. Chair, given that he can't be here, next, if we're gonna do it in the 2 weeks, might he I suggest that he forward the pictures that he did wanna show to Nate, and then those can be before the board at the next hearing.
Good
Okay.
idea.
I think we're at the point where.
I would move to continue the
I'll
public
second the
hearing
motion.
Motion second to continue, any discussion?
and continue till
10:15.
September 8th at 10,
15.
15.
both of them at the same time? Okay, I'm sorry, sir.
I guess this 4 week to me makes no difference, but I'm looking at Steve, well, both Steves, on this ditch situation, the sooner they can get it done. I don't wanna hold their process up.
Okay.
Well, that's very nice of you.
I
It won't-
do not think that mine is gonna happen for a year or two because of what has to be done. So that's why I just assume keep your meeting at 2 weeks and not extend it. It's gonna be in early fall, so.
So I just need to be clear about
Yeah,
what I
let's,
heard then.
let me make sure, Jackie, you have your hand up.
I just want to make sure, clear that I think what Mr. Dorn is saying, that this ditch system could go for 4
Yes,
weeks, but in
that's-
2 weeks, we're still gonna have the
Yeah,
24A.
Right.
They don't rely on each other, so I just want to make clear on that.
Right.
Yeah.
So Jackie, if you could wait 1 second. Mr. Dorn, do you want us to continue this further than 2 weeks so you can be here?
That would be great. I just didn't wanna hold up.
I think we do that.
That
I
was
think
my
we
earlier
accommodate.
suggestion.
Yeah.
Okay,
Is that gonna work for you?
I think it will. Yes.
Would that be the
September
22nd?
Is there anybody else that wants to speak to this that would be okay with that?
The 22nd?
22nd for this hearing?
Okay.
That would
And-
be
So-
all right.
One thing I want to note is statutorily, we do not need to renotice this because you're going to continue it.
Right.
So make
Right.
sure that the landowners that are here jot that down so they know when to show up for the next meeting.
And since we have to set a time specific on the 22nd,
Is there anything going on the 22nd? So 10 would be
10
maybe
o'clock?
recommended?
You're making that.
that will be my
amending
motion.
Your motion?
Yeah, my motion, we continue this hearing on this ditch,
I'll
September
accept that.
22nd, 10 o'clock.
22nd.
Acceptable to
Yes.
folks. Any
Yes, sir.
more discussion? All in favor?
So,
One question, I don't know what's legal on this, but right where I live on number 5, 1 mile from
Mhm.
111
Yeah,
on the corner,
Mhm.
the ditch comes down from north and goes to the east into Duck Lake. Okay, right where my drive-in is to the field, there's beavers always building up stuff. Am I legally, can I get rid of them myself, or does somebody have to do that, or how's that work?
Nick's still here?
I mean, they got piles of stuff, the water backs up towards my pump.
Sure.
My pumps, I got a pump to pump 80 acres.
Yeah.
It's about this high out of the ditch.
Yeah.
That thing's been buried in water. What happens, that keeps running around and around.
sure. So, Nate, can we talk about that separately? That's not part of this ditch repair, is it?
Quick answer.
Go ahead.
Whenever I do beaver removal or there's a potential to trap or destroy beaver, usually you can notify the DNR office in Nicollet, let them know where you live and what you're gonna do, and the same day or the next day, they can issue you a permit or give you guidance on how to handle it.
I thought they weren't protected anymore.
I don't know the exact law or the rules behind it, so I don't wanna give out wrong information.
Okay.
I usually contact them so that, they can direct you in what to do.
That's exactly what I did last year. I had beavers come in and wreck by a pond. And you gave me a guy's name from Nicollet.
Yeah.
And I paid him, and he came and he trapped him, and we just notified the DNR, and as long as it's.
Took care of it for you.
Well, we can continue. This is a good question, and this is about this issue. So we'll talk about how to help you, and I think Nate's advice is
Okay.
good advice from Mr. Burnett. So that's my motion for
Yes.
continuing the hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? This is for the 22nd.
For the 22nd at 10
10
o'clock.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Okay. I guess we're gonna clear the courtroom?
Yes. You have to read your piece.
Oh,
Read the bold part.
now, I think?
Yeah.
This portion of the meeting is closed for attorney-client privilege pursuant to Minnesota Statute, Chapter 13D, to discuss litigation regarding the improvement project on Nicollet County Ditch 62A. So, we'll bring this back, reopen the Drainage Authority meeting.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned, thank you.
Thank you all.